Well, the title of the talk today is The Dhamma is a Strategy for Emotional Ease in the Midst of This Very World. This Dhamma is not an exercise in history. It is not just for reverence. It is to be made effective. The Buddha's essential core message is really just boils down to two things. There is suffering, and there is an end to it. Now, in this day and age, and in ages past, you rarely hear this. You can certainly hear a lot about suffering, and various people have strategies for perhaps diverting it or lessening it. The Buddha says, ultimately, when we deeply investigate the suffering, that it is actually possible to remove it. Now, it is possible in the emotional world. Suffering, there are two kinds of suffering. There's the suffering of the body. When it's ill or in pain, it feels stress. Even if you sit in one posture too long, you start to feel uncomfortable. That is one form of suffering or unsatisfactory feelings. But the real core suffering is emotion. And it is produced by attitudes that we have. And these attitudes come from a lot of sources. Sometimes they're self-taught. We may be in a situation where we don't have a lot of guidance from a family or the society around us. We have to figure things out for ourselves, and we figure out emotional strategies. They are of various degrees of success and failure in these, what we come up with, because most people are not geniuses. They're not great psychologists. They're not great philosophers. Even some of the people we refer to in history as great psychologists and great philosophers don't do a very good job in this dimension. But the Buddha is transcendently a genius. In the internal, in the inner world, the emotional world, he sets himself out to solve a problem. You know, in life, we have projects. We give ourselves a project. Maybe the project is I wonder if I could have a family, a job, and have a decent life like that. So that's our project. That's most people's project. Most people's project is two things: some sort of work and some sort of love. And that some sort of love is usually family love, personal love, and the work is something which provides them with a livelihood. If they are shooting higher in life, they may ask for not only a livelihood, but actually something that's actually interesting. They may even shoot higher. They might ask for something that is not only interesting and a livelihood, but is actually a benefit to others. They might shoot higher in terms of love. They might shoot for not something just their close family, but also perhaps extending to their relatives. Or they might go farther than this. They might become a person that is concerned with social welfare in their community. Or they might look even higher than this, social welfare in their state or their country. Or they might have a look out upon the entire world and feel that I am a person who is concerned with the well-being of all humans. Or they might even look farther than that. They might include the animals. What about that? You see, that's very beautiful. These days you can see all of this amazing information on the internet about people people and animals. We are learning so much about animals because of the access to information. When animals are treated properly and encouraged in the right ways, how remarkable they are. And of course, the same with people. It is amazing. People who have not been well treated, if they are brought into the orbit of a compassionate and wise person, they discover all kinds of new experiences in their life and they respond. They awaken to lightness and joy and love as well. So this is like levels of projects. The Buddha's project is massive. He said, I suppose he felt himself to have a good deal of strength and intellect, and he looked for an exalted project. And his project was to discover truth about the nature of existence. He didn't draw a conclusion ahead of time. The problem seems to be fairly obvious to him, that if he looks around, he sees suffering everywhere, inevitable, illness, aging, death, loss, grieving, sorrow, stress, strain, problems. And for lesser mortals, we accept it and try to get through it. But he's actually asking an audacious question, that is it possible to solve this issue? Is there a strategy of mind that solves this problem? By the way, he didn't try to just solve it by himself. He went out and looked for other people to see if they had answers to this. And he did engage with various teachers that had attempted to solve this issue as well. He found it not satisfactory. And eventually, he did find a solution. And the first solution for him was that he resolved his own suffering. So he couldn't very well go out and teach to others a method for this relief of suffering if he himself had not experienced it. And so the strategies that he had were delivered to him, and he personally experienced it. And he felt confident enough in the vision that he had that he wouldn't lose it. So, every now and then we feel good. Every now and then, well, not everybody, but lots of people, there have been moments in one's life when you think, what's the problem? I don't know what I was on about there. Why don't I just be happy? And for a while we think, yeah, I was. But the trick is that somehow something happens to that kind of uplifted vision and we lose it. So then after a few times that we lose it, we're a little bit wary of proclaiming that we're going to be able to manage everything hereafter. So it's quite a statement of confidence in oneself that you have come up with a vision that you're confident enough that is unshakable. And this is one of the words that they use, that the Buddha uses about his own attainment and the possibility for other people to have this breakthrough as well, that this attitude and this vision can become unshakable. And it means that it is there under all kinds of circumstances. It's not just when things are going well, or even when things are a little bit off, like you come out and you're on your way to work, but you have a flat tire and you've got to fix the tire. But you manage to remain equanimous. Good for you. Excellent. But if your car is gone, somebody stole your car, your equanimity may be lost. So this is what he means. He wants an attitude, a way of being that is unshakable. And this is what, first of all, you have to hear this idea that such an attitude is possible. And then you have to agree that it's actually desirable. This idea is so strange. And if you go to university and study, early Greek philosophers, Stoic philosophers, and so forth, you hear about them recommending to be equanimous in different situations. Usually it's just a curiosity that is dismissed as a passing phase in philosophy, and there's all kinds of critiques of why that's inappropriate. Usually it's dismissed because people don't understand the attitude. They dismiss it as that you're unfeeling, that you're not responsive, or you're unavailable emotionally, or something like this. This is a complete lack of understanding of what is being said. So the Buddha is a very good teacher of his attitudes, and he knew very well that people would easily misunderstand what he's saying, because it's what he's recommending is attitudes which are not normal. They're not subnormal. They are supernormal. They are very effective, very beautiful, and there's no harm to them. It will not harm you in any way. It will not deprive you in any way. So when he's talking about this reduction of suffering and the increase of well-being, he is not saying that you need to deprive yourself of good-heartedness or a sense of emotional well-being. He is strongly advocating that in the midst of this attitude, this philosophy which allows you to detach yourself from the strings of suffering, from the chains of problems and sufferings of this world, that at the same time you do not have to give up your human feelings. However, the human feelings that you retain are the best ones. The other ones are dispensable. So this talk is really about our time in the world, which is different, very different than other times in the world. I mean, there are some things that are similar. For instance, we have a few wars going on right now. I mean, you've all heard about the Ukraine and Israel and Gaza and all this kind of stuff. This is going on. That's not new. The idea of, and certainly even in modern history, there's been much larger, the world itself has been engulfed in wars. And so this attitude we're trying to develop should see us through such things as wars, civil strife, and so forth. This should be, you should emotionally be well in the midst of these situations without having to adopt some sort of attitude of callousness, dismissiveness, or I don't want to know about it, I don't care, or just humans, they're so stupid and savage, I don't care about them anymore. I want to move to another world. This is not the attitude. It's still possible to have full compassion, sensitivity, goodwill, and to want to do whatever one can to alleviate the situation. But at the same time, not to induce these emotions that are saddening, grieving, frustrating, anxious, depressive, all of these things. What we have to do is go over these ideas many times to approve of them. Because if I give you a talk about this and you're not sure that that's the right attitude, I mean, many people would say, how can you not feel bad about what's happening in Russia or the Ukraine how can you not feel bad about that? Isn't it our moral duty to feel bad about that? So I'm proposing ideas that say that it is not a moral duty to feel bad about that. But at the same time, I'm not encouraging you to be dismissive or calloused about it or not care about it or anything like this. So there is something more subtle to this. And these are the words of the Buddha. This is the attitude of the Buddha. And it takes a while because this is not normal. And if you have conversations with others who are not familiar with these attitudes, you may run into misunderstandings. So by the way, when you process these ideas and these encouragements to certain kinds of attitudes, understand that these require a good deal of openness and investigation and working it through in your own process to see that it's sensible and still good. But don't expect you to be able to communicate that just over a cup of coffee with a friend on your coffee break or a lunch or when your neighbors are visiting or when your relatives drop over, to be able to communicate your attitudes. This is not easily received. You'll find a lot of misunderstandings. And so this requires examination, that you can have inner emotional well-being and health. What I'm referring to here is emotional ease. Now, during our meditation, I try to encourage you to have the sense of joy and ease because it's a spiritual value, and as I say, it's sacred. This is the sacred. Your own human heart, unburdened, at ease and joyful, is what is meant, and what should be meant by the word sacred. This is the sacred. It is possible. The more you sustain it, the more you can sustain it in the various ups and downs of life, then it is your increasing your holiness and sacred contemplation of the sacred. You're maintaining the sacred in your ordinary life. So in this modern world, there's another aspect that is not similar. Like wars have been, and terrible, terrible wars. I'm a bit of a history buff. I like to investigate. First of all, I like to inquire into Buddhist history, right back to the earliest possible things we know about the Buddha, the historical realities of it. But I also, in this process, I've come across the descriptions of history, and it is savage. The things that humans do to each other it beggars the imagination sometimes. And of course, right up to the 20th century. So the period that we're in now is fairly mild compared to a significant point of history. What is unique about our time is simply the acceleration of everything. We're on a planet, for instance, that has never, ever had 8 billion humans on it. When I was born, there were 1/3 of that number. In my life, in just my lifetime, the human population of the planet has tripled. There is no, you can go back 500,000 years. It never happened before like that. So we're in a radically interesting and different time. There's also the acceleration of technologies and so forth. And not only is it accelerating, but the rate of acceleration is accelerating as well. So this is in everybody's face now. Now, of course, magically, look what we're doing right here. There's 100 of you watching me, and I'm somewhere on the other side of the country speaking into a camera, and Metta, who is guiding this, keeps reminding me to look at the camera instead of you. So this is the middle of technology as well. I'm supposed to be looking at you, which is actually a camera. It's very difficult, by the way, to talk to a camera. It's much more engaging to talk to people, but to talk into a lens of a camera is strange, very strange, and not human experience. However, I'll do my best. So this is an accelerating thing, but also what's really interesting here is the accelerating awareness of Dhamma, at least parts of the Dhamma, and especially the Buddha Dhamma. Things that the Buddha said 25 centuries ago and which spread through parts of Asia, came and went in waves, sometimes changed whole societies, and then revolutions and wars wiped it out, etc., is more or less flourishing right now in the midst of this accelerating technology, because of this accelerating technology. So put up your hand if you've heard of the word mindfulness. I mean, how can you not? Who hasn't heard of mindfulness now? This was a rare, unthought of kind of thing just 40 years ago. My teacher, Bhante Gunaratana, who I was ordained with and who is still alive, by the way, in his 90s, he wrote a book called Mindfulness in Plain English. And I read the script of it, just the working copy of it before it was published. He handed it to me. He had it on a sheaf of typed pages with a paperclip on the corner. He said, "What do you think of this? Read this." Because actually his first language is not English, and the book title was Mindfulness in Plain English, so we really had to work on the English. But the Dhamma, he thought it was critically important that people understood this, that you can't do much if you don't have this capacity for mindfulness. So we published this book called Mindfulness in Plain English, which is, when was this? This is almost 40 years later, and it's still ricocheting around the world. I think it's sold 1 million copies, whatever. But mindfulness is everywhere now, but it wasn't. So this is a core teaching of the Buddha. And it's on your app, it's on your watch. Your smartwatch tells you, "Oh, I'm into mindfulness time." This is amazing. This is throughout enormous. It's in the emotional and in the psychological world as well. So, trained psychologists who used to be produced from the Western tradition found out that these ideas about the mind that the Buddha had developed were very valuable. And so mindfulness started to come into the culture. Now, it kind of got removed from the whole context of what Buddhism is about, but that's fine. If it really does improve you. But if you find out a little bit more about what's around mindfulness, you will even benefit more. Now, yesterday, I was requested for an interview by a reporter or a journalist from a publication called Vox, not Fox, not Fox, but Vox, Vox. So this is a journalist enterprise. It's in the media, it's in the written words, it's in magazines, etc. It's very well known, has a nice reputation. This journalist called me to have an interview. He wanted an in-depth interview about jhana. About jhana. Jhana. I hope now put up your hands if you've heard of this word. Let's put up this hand here. Jhana. Have you heard? Who's heard of jhana? So that, by the way, jhana is the 8th factor of the Eightfold Path. Mindfulness is the 7th factor of the Eightfold Path. And this 8th factor is, in English, we would say right concentration. It's a very profound and special state of mind, a supernormal state of mind. And up to now, it's been very relegated to only a few kind of special monks who live in caves and so forth and meditate a lot. although I have been talking about this jhana and trying to make it available to people, promoting it, that people should become aware of this for the last 30 years. Now, some of you at the Ottawa Buddhist Society have taken courses with me going back at least 30, more than 30, 30 years. And I have given instructions even in this jhana and so forth, and samadhi, and encouragements, not only to practice mindfulness, of course, but also just to become aware that there are deeper states of mind, very beautiful and beneficial states of mind. So this is what I asked him, why you want to talk to me about jhana? He says, well, this is starting to be a currency. The mindfulness people are starting to talk about this thing called jhana. And they're like, he is wondering as a journalist, is it possible for ordinary people? Is it useful to actually try this, or are people mistaken about this? Is it impossible these days, or is it easy? This kind of stuff. So the whole interview was about this new kind of awareness. Now, please pay attention that you will probably be hearing more and more and more about jhana. It might enter the English language. What other words, by the way, are now English words? Here's one for you, Dharma. Here's another one, nirvana. Here's another one, karma. So those words have entered but those are in the Oxford English Dictionary. They're not considered foreign words. They're now English words. Nirvana is an English word. Samsara is also an English word. So these ideas are slowly, strangely entering the culture and the language of the West. And it's because they explain a lot. So this is very interesting. People are realizing that they need something to help them deal with this acceleration, this increasing rapidity and the blitz, the snowstorm of information and media that pervades every aspect of our lives, that they're wondering, is there a way? And indeed, this meditative process is a way. But it's not, we can't just, most people can't just withdraw from society and just do deep meditation. So they need very strongly to have an attitude. And this attitude needs to be, we need to refresh ourselves about this constantly, that it is possible and encouraged by the Buddha that in this flurry, this snowstorm of advancing technology, and of course the whole ecological situation on the planet with the 8 billion people and all of the various technologies polluting everything, all of these things are presented to us in our face constantly, and it is possible to be well and richly at ease and remain with a sensitive heart to the difficulties of others, and to respond with whatever skills and wisdom we have at appropriate times, but without ourselves being overwhelmed by negative emotions, despair, or frustrations, or agitation, or a diminishing of our attention spans. This is a classical side effect, especially for young people, as they are flooded in their early years by media. Their attention span is decreasing, and this is a problem. It is not necessary. We have good advice about how to change that and reverse that, and to increase our capacity to sustain attention, and how to make our ordinary lives, very ordinary lives, a much better experience. And it is by these inner attitudes. By the way, I want to mention that, so mindfulness is the seventh factor of the Eightfold Path. And then you just heard that I mentioned that people are starting to get interested in what comes after mindfulness. There's an eighth factor? Oh my goodness. So, by the way, I have just written a book, and it's called What Comes Before Mindfulness. So I've given lots of talks and everything about what comes after mindfulness, that is the jhana. But I have a book which I've written. Now, how do I show this? Yeah. What comes before mindfulness? Effective effort. How to garden your inner life. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't hear anybody, but put up your hand if you can guess what comes before mindfulness. Put up your hand if you can guess what comes before mindfulness. I see a few hands coming up there. And is your answer this? I'll wait just a second before you think about it. What comes before mindfulness? Mindfulness is seventh factor. Jhana is the eighth factor. What comes before mindfulness? Hint, hint. What becomes before seven? Six. What is the sixth factor of the path? Right effort. Oh, you all got it. That's great. You all had it. Okay, I knew that. So, yes, what is missing from the general mindfulness movement, which is a great benefit to many people, is that there's a good deal of advice about what mindfulness is supposed to be carrying out. And what mindfulness is supposed to be carrying out is right effort. And if you haven't read the instructions on page 6, you really won't be carrying out the right instructions for page 7. So I have written a whole book because I felt that not only so many teachers, so many lay teachers, even monastics are teaching this mindfulness, but it's a type of mindfulness which has been removed from the path, the very beneficial and beautiful advice of the path. And if you haven't clearly looked at what is the Buddha says is right effort, you really will not reap all of the benefits of mindfulness. It won't be right mindfulness. So it's really in the sixth factor, the right effort, where you start to get advice about emotions and what emotions, how to deal with your emotions. There's a lot of talk in the mindfulness circles about watching. Mindfulness is watching, is attending and watching. Unfortunately, that is not what the Buddha said. What the Buddha said is that your attention is necessary in order to understand what type of thoughts and feelings need to go and which types of thoughts and feelings need to be kept, and which types of thoughts and feelings need to be increased and sustained and refined. So it's not just watching, it's cultivating. So it's instead of watching a field grow or a forest grow, you're actually planting a garden. And a garden isn't something you watch, it's something you garden. So your actual emotional structure, you have to be on the alert for, what am I thinking? What am I feeling right now? And that's not enough. And you'll get instructions in mindfulness about know that you're feeling anger. Watch that you're feeling anger. And that's the first sentence in this instruction manual. What about the next sentence? And the next sentence and the next sentence? What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to watch it? No, that's not from the Buddhist point of view. You're supposed to do something about it. You're supposed to do something about greed, hatred, and delusion. You're supposed to do something about that. You're not supposed to watch it. You're supposed to do something about it. And when generosity and kindness and clarity do arise, you're supposed to do something about that too. You're not supposed to just watch it. You're supposed to keep it and deepen it. And when it's not there, you're supposed to bring it into existence. So there's a lot of effort involved, a lot of fertilizing and watering and planting and weeding and reading about what plants need. Some plants need sunlight, some plants like the shade, and so forth. This process is a gardening of the emotions. And you will have a very beautiful garden if you follow these instructions. But if you don't have access to this understanding about what comes before mindfulness, you won't have, your mindfulness will not be directed in the right way. And secondly, that if mindfulness is directed in the right way, it's how you get to the eighth factor. It's how you get to this samadhi, this jhana. You can't get there if you don't have right mindfulness, but it's not right mindfulness if you don't have right effort. And the point of the whole exercise is explained as right view. And what is right view? Right view is the attitude that I can be in this world right now. It doesn't have to be 2,500 years ago in India. Right now, with all the computers blinking at you and every kind of technology and acceleration of things, etc., in this very world, it is possible, and the point of the exercise that one can experience emotional ease. You can have emotional ease in this very world. And it can continue from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. And by the way, if it does, it will continue in your sleep and even in your dreams. And that is the point of the exercise. It is the it is the Buddha's big project for his whole life. And because he's a grand mind, a grand heart, he knows that this is it is the most important information ever revealed in human society. And that it will persist in time as long as people come across it with the right information. And this requires people to practice it themselves and then by practicing it themselves, they become enthusiasts. So I put up your hand if you're an enthusiast. I'm an enthusiast. I'm very enthusiastic about this. Now, some of you know me since, I don't know, almost 40 years. And I'm more enthusiastic about it every year. Because the more benefit you get, the more you think, what else is there to do? There is nothing else to do. This is the point of the exercise. To get rid of all of these bad ideas, misdirection, bad ideas, and to realize that whatever the situation is in the world, there is a way to be with this world that is where unnecessary suffering is dismissed. It's simply gone. Now we have to repeat this, we have to exercise it, and people will get it at different stages. Then it'll take some people longer, and the things that help are things like this. You sit down with people who are expressing Dhamma, and you get refreshed. Somebody else makes you enthusiastic about it again. They talk you into it, and They guide you into it, and then you read a book about it, and oh yeah, right. It helps you get. So you need all of the assistance that you can have, both. And this is one of the bennies of all this technology is look. I have a YouTube channel with 300 talks on it, and covering a very large swath of the teachings that could be useful to most people. That's part of the channel. Is part of my project is to try to make information that is actually useful and beneficial for a vast number of people, both from the beginners who are just approaching this, all the way to advanced meditators, but available and in English and in the cultural setting of our times. So this is available to us. So there are benefits and negative aspects to all of this acceleration of things, but you need to avail yourselves of this capacity for Dhamma and interconnection. One of the things that we've done at Birken is also set up these what are called upasaka groups, who people take a 1-year course online. They don't even have to come to the monastery. And it's systematic information about the primary teachings of the historical Buddha in the Pali Canon, introduction to having a relationship to monastics. Monastics are very rare in the West, right? So people they don't know about that. They're afraid of monasteries and monks and all that kind of stuff. So we make ourselves available and explain who we are and how we can help and how you can help us, etc. So this is systematic. And this, because of the media that we have, the YouTubes and websites and so forth, this spreads all over the world. And it is free and available day or night. And you can watch it as many times as you want. And then I write books as well. So, and these things go out on Amazon and so forth. So now you can zap it down onto a Kindle or whatever. So this is what is helpful in this world and how you nourish yourself in order to maintain this sense of emotional ease. You have support. You have friends. There are others in the Dhamma. It's available. And you practice again and again. So I was one of the people who works here as a steward. Her name is Pia, and we were talking just before I was going to give a talk. She asked, "What are you going to talk about?" I said, "This and that." She said, "You said something to me a while ago that I have pasted onto the wall of the office, and it is this: it is against my religion to worry, and it is against my religion to be anxious, and it is against my religion to be impatient." And she said, "Yeah, everybody else gets to say it's against my religion to do that, So you can say that, whatever the situation is that you're in, you can't say, it's against my religion to be afraid. It's against my religion to be anxious about this situation. It's against my religion to be annoyed with you. I have a right to my religion, my religious views. And whatever the situation is in this world, I don't have to go along with it. I don't have to go along with these attitudes everybody else is telling me that I have to feel this way and I have to feel that way about this situation, about that situation. I don't have to feel that way. It's against my religion to feel that way. And I'm a devoted follower of this grand person in history named the Buddha, who advised me not to be greedy, angry, and confused. And I surrender to that wisdom. And he said I should be generous. in a joyful way, a joyful generosity. And I should enjoy myself as a kindly and friendly person because it really feels good. And I should have clarity because he said it's a good idea. And I just believe him. And if I do that, I won't need to ask anybody else, am I having fun yet? You won't need to ask anybody else, is this supposed to be good? You will know this is good. This is true. This is beautiful. The Dhamma is a direct experience, and you are welcome to take it up as a strategy for emotional ease in this world, because you can say to anybody who asks, it's my religion. So this is a brief talk, fairly general, but just remember a couple of things about it that are important is there's mindfulness, but what comes before it and what comes afterwards. And the fact that you're in an unusual period in history, and it has negative aspects to it, but it also has some very positive aspects in terms of your ability to find Dhamma in a good, clear expression, and to associate with monastics who are rather rare in this society, but you can get associate with them through media and through books, etc. And that this has always been one of the Buddha's strategies, is that Sangha is very helpful. Other people who have the same attitudes and encourage and understand you are very helpful to you. So this is remarkably available at this time in history. It wasn't 30 years ago even. It is now there. So avail yourself of this opportunity. Find support in the Sangha. Increase your education in Dhamma. And remember to appreciate the genius of the Buddha, because he is just looking after you. That's all. He's looking after your well-being and happiness and is saying, it really is unnecessary to suffer as most people do. There is a way out of it, and it's well explained. Please avail yourself of the information.